very much. And welcome to the Big Book Club. Yes, books are back on telly. Good evening, Helensburgh. Yeah? It's very lovely to be here in the Tower Digital Arts Centre, which has been welcoming writers for over 100 years, since before digital things. In 1885, Oscar Wilde stood on this very spot and gave a lecture on how to dress. Yes. I would like more of an ooh from Marian. So every week I've been travelling around Scotland talking to some of the world's best-loved and best-selling novelists, non-fiction writers, and tonight we have our first short story. Book clubs are big business, and every week I join one, and for this show, I followed in the dainty footsteps of Miss Jean Brodie to Cramond and met the BC Amigos. In a very un-Cramond fashion, they drink porn star martinis at their book club, and they were delicious. I loved all 4 of them. Every week we go deep on a theme. Tonight we'll hear from 4 of the funniest writers going. Our guests are music mogul turned novelist John Niven, screenwriter and novelist David Nicholls, the frankly fabulous Marian, and our spoken word artist is Chris McQueer. But first, guests first. John Niven really is one of the loveliest people that you'll ever meet. He's a paid-up feminist. He's best friends with Caitlin Moran. He gives money to charity. He's nice to his wee mum. And yet he has created in Stephen Stelfox one of the foulest characters in fiction. An amoral, money-grabbing murderer. Not the same as John, fictional character. Very important distinction. To tell us how he does it, please welcome the satirist these crazy times demand and the pride of Irvine, John Niven. Thank you. Welcome. She is.
Quite the intro. Thank you.
I thought pride of Irvine made you sound a wee bit like a boat.
Boaty make boat face.
So, your book is disgusting. I mean, it really is one of the filthiest things I've ever read, and it is the book that we really need now, because somehow it manages to be even more extreme than the climate that we live in. Do you want to read a wee bit first?
I'll do that, yeah. Funnily enough, in the researcher came back and said, we're trying to find a page of this we can actually read. I thought, it's not that bad, and then I sort of went, it's that bad. It really is that bad.
We've edited lightly this page.
Yeah, I'll read this wee bit here, which is a bit as clean as it gets. It is, I think to myself, a wonderful world. A place where ambition still outstrips talent. Where common decency is about as common as Minotaur eggs. Where the kind and the weak are ripped apart like loaves of bread, like Cambodian babies in the streets of Phnom Penh in April 1975. Top lad, Pol Pot. Where lefties and snowflakes, increasingly as rare as Minotaur eggs themselves, gather in huddles and corners of the internet and tell themselves that, although things are bad right now, although hatred and intolerance seem to be on the rise, this is a blip. That people are fundamentally decent and honest and kind, and that good will out. They do not know or refuse to understand that this blip is the size of several continents now and is going to go on for a long, long time. A tiki-torch parade of screaming white faces stretching into infinity. A world where might is not just right, it is all. Where money doesn't talk or swear, it nukes, it daisy cuts, it levels all before it. The work is done. Even the poor think the poor are losers nowadays. In a world whose richest, most powerful inhabitant cuts about stripped to the waist fighting tigers while he burns families out of their homes to make way for pipelines and has his enemies killed, I am thinking about the tax breaks, corporate and personal, that I'll be getting in the Trump administration's first full budget. I'm thinking of the BBC News report I caught from back home the other morning, the graph that showed the areas in the northeast of England who are going to be worst hit economically by Brexit. I'm thinking about all the Untermensch, the no-marks, the zero net worth tollers who will be kicked off Medicare, who will lose their homes, who will see the pittance in their miserable pay packets shrink to nothing, and who voted for it. I think of all this and I find I'm getting an erection. So. I am available for children's parties.
The thing when I was reading that particular paragraph was that it is the world that we're in now. In some ways, it's not fiction. What you've written is real.
You hit on one of the great challenges facing the satirist right now. It's is that all you've got?
Yeah.
You know, the novel I'm writing at the moment is sort of set in America in 2026. So you're playing that game of trying to project on the assumption that Trump does 2 terms and then you're halfway through Ivanka's first term.
Oh my
what would that America look like?
Halfway through Ivanka's first term.
And the thing is, you're constantly having to go back and think, I'm really not going anywhere near far enough. You know, the news outstrips you on a daily basis, you know?
Yeah. And is that book that you're writing, is that another Stell Fox book, or is that?
No, it's something different, but it ties into this book a wee bit. It'll form a kind of, in my mind, a loose trilogy.
So if the news is outstripping you, do you just have to become more and more extreme?
But people often, given the kind of fiction I write, people think that, you know, you must really sweat and slave to kind of go that extreme. But, you know, one of the things you're talking about is humour here tonight and being funny. And what's kind of naturally funny to me, I'm aware, isn't always automatically funny to a lot of... For instance, with this novel, when I was pitching it to my publisher, I thought it's going to be fantastic, and the central characters are sort of an unrepentant paedophile. And there's a sort of intake of breath in the room, and I'm like, well, it's not a documentary. It's a novel, you know. And I'll have friends who'll say things like, you know, I've got kids myself, and I really struggled with some of the book. I'm like, I've got kids too. No children were harmed in the making of this book. It's the flight of the imagination.
Were you harmed in the making of it?
Well, that remains to be seen, David, maybe down the line.
Let's talk about Lucius Depree, who is in absolutely no way, we must legally say in any way, like Michael Jackson. But do tell us about the Emperor of Pop, as you call him in the novel.
He's a white man who spent his whole life trying to become black through various extreme operations.
So you say... So you say at one point that he looks like a Colonel Gaddafi done by RuPaul's Drag Race.
That's in his later phase.
Which is a really great visual.
When things get really extreme.
I like it when he's in a caftan and a bum bag towards the end. I just couldn't stop thinking of Elizabeth Taylor at that point as well.
Again, you read the reference points well.
So Lucius is born white, wants to be black.
It just seemed to me that the very basic facts of a life like Michael Jackson's seemed to me a goldmine for an open goal that nobody had kind of done. And then once you take that and you put it into a comic novel where one of the things you do is exaggeration, it seemed to me you could have a lot of fun with that concept. Although I'm aware that my idea of fun might be divergent from...
Yeah, a social worker's.
Or any sane person's indeed, but, you know, hopefully it works.
But he is an unrepentant paedophile, and he has a 5,000-acre personal resort in Pacific Palisades called Narnia, which really ruined The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe for me. That was one of my childhood favourite books.
Again, any resemblances to anyone you might be thinking of are purely
incidental. Purely incidental. And so he's got this trick, and basically he's frozen at the age that he became famous.
Yeah, which is quite a common syndrome.
Did you see that a lot when you were working in music?
You did about, funnily enough, we were talking about this just before we came on, that, you know, there's a certain type of person who never hear the word no much after the age 17. Mm-hmm. So that does quite interesting things to personality by the time you're older, I think. And that was one of the things I thought would be funny to play with, you know.
Yeah, he describes it as the dreaded syllable.
Yeah,
he can't even really bring himself to say it, you know. And everybody around him is saying yes, including his doctor. Let's talk about Dr. Ali.
That was, funnily enough, he has in the novel, the character of Lucius Depree has a doctor and a father. And as you can imagine, some of the certainly Kill Your Friends in this novel had fairly extensive legal reads.
We should just say what a legal read is for people who don't know.
Lawyers go through the book and they say, this is okay, this might be dodgy. And in my case, with these two specific books, the legal read was nearly as long as the novel itself.
Do you have to pay for that?
No, the publishers pay, but of course...
They must love you.
Well, but if you get sued, they sue you as well. They don't just, that's yourself. They sue you and the publisher. So there were the two sticking points. They weren't so worried about the Michael Jackson thing and that he was dead. But they were a bit concerned about he had a father, in real life, and he had a doctor. And the view was, well, the father of the doctor could kind of say, I recognise myself in these portrayals. And then as we're having this discussion, and as the book was going to print, Jackson's father died. I was like, fantastic. One less guy we've got to worry about, right? And then with the doctor, I eventually said to them, look, Michael Jackson's doctor gave him a general anaesthetic to go to sleep every night until it killed him. Is this guy really going to come and say, you have defamed my fine medical practice? you had one patient and you killed him. I mean, it's like...
But did he die as well, or did you not manage to get to him?
No, I didn't manage. No, he's still out there, Damien.
Still out there.
Get ready to sue me.
So let's talk about Stelfox, who only dawned on me when I was reading this novel that his initials are SS.
That took you a while.
It did take me a while. 2 books, halfway through the second one, I was like, oh, SS, that's really clever. He maybe is a Nazi. So what's he been doing since the end of Kill Your Friends?
He ran a sort of TV talent show in America, sort of, you know, X Factor type thing, and then sold the rights for a lot of money. So he's worth a few $100 million. But of course, he lives in a world now where he hangs out with billionaires. So he's convinced he's really poor. So his sort of kicker into action in the book is that he wants to get a lot richer. You know, it's that notion that, you know, enough is never enough for these guys. You know, how many yachts can you water ski behind? It's,
right.
You know.
So he takes the gig, which is?
He has a friend who runs a record company in America who has on his books Lucius Depree, the pop star that bears no resemblance to anyone living or dead. And Lucius has a problem in that he's about to be blackmailed by one of his special friends who's managed to obtain a video of some fairly unreasonable activities. What happens is, initially Stelfox's, and if you know the character from the books, his thought is, well, let's just kill him.
Yeah.
But then he thinks, the question he asks himself is, you remember those sort of rumours that Elvis wasn't dead, that Elvis lives, the sort of tabloid supermarket rumours. He thinks, what if Elvis had lived? What if, you know, like 6 months, a year after you thought he was dead, Elvis rocked up and I'm back. How much money would you have made? How many records would you sell? So he comes up with this plan. He tells everybody, we're going to fake his death, hide him away for a while, and then bring him back and put a big album out and make all the money. And of course, everybody's reaction is, you're insane. That will never, you know, we can't tell a lie of that magnitude. And the backdrop to all the action in the book is Trump's election in 2017. And so as they're having this conversation, he points to a TV screen in the boardroom where Trump's up there saying how his inauguration was the biggest ever witnessed in history. And he says, you don't get where we are now. We can go, there's nothing that's far enough. We can tell the biggest lie conceivable, as long as we say it again and again through a really big microphone, we'll be fine. And sure enough, well, things proceed like that for a while. And then, of course, it gets more complicated.
Is Stelfox ever actually going to go into politics?
Well, I keep saying maybe another 10 years when I can face hanging out with him for another 400 pages, maybe.
Is it hard to do that? Do you find it difficult?
I find it alarmingly fun.
Right.
Because it's kind of fun to have a character who's every 10 years is a repository for all the worst things you've heard or thought, you know. But as you were saying in your introduction, the danger is sometimes you meet people and they think that's you know, because they don't really know what a novel does, you know.
And you do screenwriting alongside the novels, but you don't talk that much about it. How come?
I like doing it. It's sort of, writing a book, you get to sort of play God. You know, all the decisions are yours, and editors will discuss, you know, as Nabokov said, they'll discuss a comma as though it was a point of art, which it often is. Whereas in Hollywood, when you're working, writing, rewriting films, it'll be like, I hate this character, lose this entire thing, lose this scene, lose this whole, you know, it's much harsher environment for us gentle snowflake writers to deal with.
Tell us a wee bit more about the new book, though, because I'm quite intrigued. So it's set in America, halfway through Ivanka's first term, did you say?
Well, what it was is like, I got a friend, Alan, who's, without knowing it, is one of these guys who's hilarious. And we're in the pub a couple of years ago and he was talking about a friend of ours who'd got cancer. And Alan said, oh, you know what you do when you get that diagnosis, John? And I'm going, there's about 5 of us sitting there. And I said, well, you know, your bucket list thing, you go and swim with the dolphins or see the world, whatever. He goes, no, you get 5 or 6 guys who've really crossed you in your life, really done you over. And you turn up, ding dong, at the door, you get a shotgun, right? And they open the door and you give them a minute till they know why you're there. And then, yeehaw, and you blow. And we're all going, you'd go on a killing spree in response to the answer. And I was like, aye. I know what you're doing. And so somebody else went, Alan, you've not got a bucket list so much as a fuck it list. I was doing so well.
Let's get my swear box out. There we go.
So I thought this is a fabulous idea for a novel. So I decided to do it in the future time frame in America. A guy who's got, you know, half a dozen enemies he wants to sort out, and he gets this diagnosis. And it's a fun-filled, rambunctious tale. If you look at it, Christmas present for any elderly relatives or children.
Please join me in thanking John Niven. Sweet Sorrow, as the title suggests, is both sweet and sorrowful. It's the story of one life-changing summer for 16-year-old Charlie Lewis. Charlie is the boy in the school photos that you forget. School is not great and home is even worse, and then Fran Fisher bursts into his life, and she's properly a bit posh and she's gorgeous, but if he wants to get with her, he has to join an amateur dramatics production of Romeo and Juliet. The price of love is Shakespeare. I happen to know that David has a thing for Muriel Spark, so I'm sure he's delighted that we paired his latest novel with the creme de la creme of Cramond. Cramond is a small village on the outskirts of Edinburgh, but it plays a surprisingly big role in literature. I'm here to meet the BC Amigos Book Club, but before I do, Julia and Fran from the group are going to fill me in on the literary heritage of Cramond. Pleased to meet you both. Thanks for having me in Cramond. This I recognise from the film of the Prime Minister Brody.
Yeah, that's right. That's Bambugle Castle, but it's now used for weddings.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's where Mr. Lowther, the fancy man, had his country estate.
That's right.
I think it might even be fancier in the film than it is in the book. It's pretty special.
It's very beautiful. Yeah, right on the edge of the sea.
Tell me about the Cramond Robert Louis Stevenson connection.
There's a story that he walked from New Haven to Cramond, and during that talk with his father, he told his father that he didn't want to be an engineer, he wanted to be a writer.
So he basically came out to his dad as a writer
Yes,
on a walk.
yeah.
It's quite interesting. There used to be an old pub here called the Old Oak, which is unfortunately now knocked down. And Robert Louis Stevenson would meet some of his friends here in the evenings. I think they called it the Cramond University Club, and they would put the world to rights.
Over whiskey.
I'll probably have a lot of whiskey. Yeah.
I'm not just here to take in the local sights. It's time to see the BC Amigos in action. So tell me about the book group.
We had all got together 6 years ago and we didn't necessarily know each other. And we've all got to know each other really well, and some of us haven't been well throughout that 6 years, and part of the club has gone beyond books. So we've helped. So Julia, unfortunately, was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years ago, Julia. And we set up a rota, so the week of chemotherapy, everybody dropped a dinner down to Julia or took her to hospital if she needed it.
It was very unexpected, and it was just an amazing surprise, you know, just to have this group of book club angels, as I kind of referred to them, and it's just kind of like cemented a sort of like, you know, friendship for life.
So time to talk about the book. Are we divided? Are we unanimous?
I was very pleasantly surprised by the themes that unfolded. Just loved the depiction of the kind of decaying family, the financial pressure, the relationship breaking down, and we don't really realise what an impact this has on this young man's development really until we get through the book.
I did like it. I liked the way he was pulled into the drama group, and he grew from it, you know, and that was so lovely, I thought, you know, and the whole blossom of the romance, but yeah, kind of went a bit pear-shaped in the end. It didn't grip me at the beginning. That's what I love a book to do, but I really enjoyed the story. I agree about the family and whatever, but all I wanted to know was, is he going to, you know, hook up with Fran or not? That was the drive for me.
If you wanted to ask him a question, what would you ask?
To what extent is it autobiographical? There's so many little details that are so convincing.
Thank you very much for letting me join the Amigos. Even though it was only for a night, I had a lovely time. So thanks for having me. Bye! Please welcome the brilliant David Nicholls. Will you give us a wee reading from Sweet Sorrow, which I have to say is a very beautiful looking book.
Yes, it is.
It's a very handsome hardback.
This isn't a particularly beautiful passage. It's from early on in the book. The novel starts with the last day of school in a school disco. And this is from a chapter called Slowies. And Charlie is dancing with a girl and thinking back to other experiences he's had. Grandmothers aside, I had kissed or been kissed twice before, though it might be more accurate to describe those events as facial collisions. The first occasion was in a darkened audiovisual exhibit on a history field trip to Roman remains. There's no reason why anyone should instinctively know how to kiss. Like snowboarding or tap dancing, it can't be learnt from watching. But Becky Boyne had taken her instruction from Disney fairy tales, pursing her lips into a tight, dry bud that she tapped around my face like a bird getting nuts from a feeder. Films had also taught us that a kiss was not a kiss unless it made a noise, and so each point of contact was accompanied by a little lip-smacking sound as artificial as the clip-clop that represents a horse. Eyes open or closed. I kept them open in case of discovery or attack, and read the wall display behind her. The Romans, I noted, had pioneered underfloor heating, and on it went, the tap, tap, tap becoming harder and more insistent, like someone trying to unblock a stapler. Kissing Sharon Finley, on the other hand, was an angry, open-mouthed, frenzied shark attack, both of us jammed down the back of a sofa. My friend Harper had a den, a concrete bunker in the basement of his house that held a certain notoriety and on Friday nights resembled the Playboy Mansion's fallout shelter. Here, Harper presided over exclusive, high-rolling DVD parties, doling out own-brand lager spiked with soluble aspirin, the olive in our martini, to be drunk through a straw and potent enough to send us behind the sofa, kissing amongst the dust balls and the dead flies. I had never been more aware that the tongue was a muscle, a powerful, skinless muscle like the arm of a starfish. And whenever I tried to raise my head, it was ground back down into the dusty underlay with the same kind of force and motion required to juice a grapefruit. I retain a certain memory that when Sharon Finley belched, my cheeks puffed out. And when we finally pulled apart... It's horrible. And when we finally pulled apart, she wiped her mouth along the entire length of her arm, the experience leaving me shaken and sore-jawed with 2 small rips in the corner of my mouth, a third in the root of my tongue, and nauseous, too, from what must conservatively have been half a pint of someone else's saliva. But I was also strangely excited, as if after some harrowing fairground ride, so that I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it again immediately or never again in my life.
Parts of that reading are what the word boke was invented for, to actually feel a slight rise. So that's Charlie at the end of school. And the end of school, as you depict it, is it's chaotic and mad.
Yeah, madness. I think the description is that it's a lot of animals being let out into the world and then without being quite certain where they want to go, what they want to do, and looking back over their shoulders. So for Charlie, it's a sort of, it's a mixed blessing. A lot of his friends are off to college, but he's failed his exams for complicated reasons, and he doesn't really know what the future holds. And the summer is sort of stretching out ahead of him endlessly, and it's both exhilarating and a little bit frightening for him.
Do you remember that summer in your life?
I do, but nothing like this happened. I went to work in a coffee percolator factory, and I spent the whole summer in this big warehouse making coffee percolators, and there was no big summer romance.
Was that every bit as thrilling as it sounds?
And I spent 2 days on the Isle of Wight, and that was my summer. But there isn't a novel in that, so I had to make something up.
No, you did. And you did, and it's a brilliant novel. And it's not the novel I thought you were going to write after us, because your protagonists were getting older.
Yeah.
And us, they're sort of middle-aged, and I thought the next novel, they might be in a home.
Yeah.
And I thought the next novel after that might be about ghosts.
Exactly, yeah.
But you went back to the teens. Why?
Partly it was to break that pattern. I'd written a novel about a 52-year-old man when I was 45, and I thought what must that be like? And now, as a 52-year-old man, I thought I maybe need to write about something else and go back to the very beginning. And when you write a book, you sort of cross it off your list. There's subject matter that you can't go back to again. I didn't want to write... The last novel was about marriage and midlife, and I didn't want to write about that. I wanted to go right back to the beginning and write about love in a way that I hadn't before, and to write about first love, which is a kind of unique, almost exists in a little bubble, a unique experience that I hadn't really dealt with. But not to write about it in the voice of a 16-year-old, to write about it from the point of view of someone looking back with a certain amount of wisdom, a certain amount of regret, a certain amount of nostalgia, but some pain too at events of that summer.
Yes, the structure is now, then.
Yeah.
Kind of go backwards and forwards on time.
And the present sort of bubbles up until eventually it takes over the novel, so you find out the viewpoint from which Charlie is telling the story.
Yes, you do. I always wonder with novels where the time frame is split, if you write all of one time frame and then the other time frame and then sort of chop them up, or if you write it in that order.
I wrote it initially chronologically, and it meant that Charlie wasn't meeting Fran. I mean, it's a love story, it's a classic first love story, but Charlie wasn't meeting Fran until about page 110, which was way too late. So I dismantled it a little bit and then wrote it straight through to the end. But I have this sort of, before I started writing the novel, you know, in films you always see someone write chapter 1 and then think. That's always frightened me. I've always written a lot of notes, a lot of plans, there's a lot of structuring before I actually sit down to write the book. So that was really the only change I made. I don't start the thing until I know pretty much everything about the character, everything that's going to happen to them, what the ending is going to be. So did you know you were
going to kill her off in one day when you started it?
Oh, yeah. That's what the book...
Yeah. I was going to kill her right from the start. She was dead.
I mean, in a way, that's what the book was about. It was about this ordinary day that turns out not to be so ordinary. So it was sort of the premise. It wasn't a kind of, you know, a whim or a sudden change in direction. It was always... They've always been... I was a screenwriter before I was a novelist, and with screenplays, you're not really allowed to write the fun stuff, the dialogue and the jokes, until you have the architecture in place. And then it's almost like a series of boxes that you go back and you fill in. And the filling in is the fun bit, but you have to know where all these boxes are going to come first.
Let's talk a wee bit more about Charlie's life. You said there were complicated reasons why he'd not done well in his exams. I mean, there's one big complicated reason, and that's his dad.
Yes, his parents have split up, and his father has had ambitions that have been thwarted, and he's living alone.
Ambitions that have been thwarted, that sounds quite Shakespearean. I mean, he'd opened like a jazz record shop that had gone down, and then various other businesses that were not doing well. So it's kind of depression and recession in one person.
Yeah, he's sort of... the mum has gone, and Charlie's been left with his dad because the mum hopes that they have a special bond, but the special bond has evaporated. I wanted to write about mental health and to write about depression, but from the point of view of someone who really doesn't know what to do about it. The word isn't actually mentioned until quite late in the novel, and there are all kinds of euphemisms for it. The dad's a bit blue, he's a bit down, he's waiting for a change in his fortunes. No one's really prepared to confront it, and Charlie, who does love his father, really doesn't know what to do, and is sort of in the role of a carer, but hugely resents what his father is going through, and is confused and frightened by it. And so he runs away. He goes on these long, aimless bike rides through the countryside, hoping for something to change.
And something does change, which is that he meets Fran.
That's right, yeah. There's a very, I mean, almost a kind of classic romantic comedy kind of, what do they call it?
Meet cute.
A meet cute. Yeah, in a meadow, and he realizes that he wants to see her again, and realizes that the only way to do that is to join the company and play some sort of role. And Charlie hates the idea. You know, he thinks these people are absurd and pretentious. He hates Shakespeare. He thinks it's written in another language. He doesn't want anything to do with it. But he has to keep turning up if he wants to see Fran.
And he gets cast in the production of Romeo and Juliet as Benvolio, which is kind of like. You know, you're on stage, but really, you know, you could be anybody. It's a sort of anybody role. I really enjoyed the bits where he was so awkward with the actors, and where he's doing all the trust exercises, which are about, you know, being good in your body and feeling confident and trusting other people. And he's like, the thought of touching other people horrifies him. And he's just appalled by his own body. You capture all that awkwardness very well. You're very good at awkward.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Oh,
I
good.
think.
Yes, very good at awkward. He says it
sitting
awkwardly.
awkwardly.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but you really are very good at it, and it's one of the bits that I absolutely love.
Thank you.
I have a question for you from our book club over in Cramond. We kind of touched on this earlier, and I suppose we could broaden it out from just this book. But when you're writing stuff, how much of your fiction is biographical? Obviously, it all comes from you.
Yeah.
But do you ever feel like, oh, actually, this happened. I could lift that from my real life and drop it in?
Well, the kissing stuff I got from the internet. I looked that up. And
that must have been some Google search.
No, I mean it's mostly made up. I mean there was no summer, there was no Fran, there was no production of Romeo and Juliet. But that feeling, those sensations of being that age and not being sure what the future holds, and being frightened and being lonely and wanting to present a certain image to the world. Of course, you both experience that and hope that it's universal. Charlie worked in a petrol station. That's something I used to do. The family background is completely different. There's a big set piece in the novel where they take it in turns to eat jars of spices as a kind of dare. And I'm embarrassed to say that we used to do that because, there was no internet, and how do you fill the days? And another stupid game where you throw darts up in the air and wait for them to land. We used to do that as well. But no, the love story, I'm afraid, is all made up. And it's what you're aiming for, I suppose, is a kind of... You want the reader to read it and say, that's what it felt like. That I remember that sensation. I remember that experience. So you want something that is both absolutely true, but also entirely fictional. I mean, the biggest change in this book, it's important not to write your own photo album, so I wanted to write someone who was a different age to me. Charlie's about almost 20 years younger than me. The year's 97. I was 16 in 82. So all of that, I had to kind of not heavily research, but hope that there wasn't that much difference in the two ages. The biggest difference, I think, is also that Charlie, I was very academically ambitious. I mean, I was a swot, and Charlie isn't. He doesn't know quite what he wants to do. I love being in plays. I loved writing. I loved books. I loved this whole idea of culture in a very pretentious way. And Charlie probably would have looked at me and thought, we wouldn't have got on necessarily. So you have to write a little bit away from yourself just to prevent it becoming self-indulgent and dull. So it's nearly all made up, but hopefully it also rings true.
I mean, I'm going to say that answer was elaborate and fulsome. You've got to be satisfied, ladies of Cramond. She's like, I'll come back to you. So how do you balance your screenwriting with the novels? Because for the last couple of years, I mean, you did get your BAFTA for adapting the Melrose novels.
Yeah.
They are incredible.
Thank you.
They're some of the best things I've ever seen on telly.
Thank you.
Really hard to watch.
Yes, but that's the wonderful thing about screenwriting is you can write out... there's a difference between the material I choose to write in fiction, which inevitably, even if it's not autobiographical, does come from somewhere inside you, and screenwriting, which is often more of a craft, more technical, more about editing and structure, more about selecting material if you're working on an adaptation. And if someone had given me the story of Patrick Melrose to write as an original script, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I'm very proud of those scripts, but very aware that they're pretty faithful to those extraordinary novels, and a lot of it was about moving things around and editing and shaping.
What are you adapting now? Anything else?
Well, my last novel, Us, they are shooting today in Barcelona. There's filming some
And you're in
scenes.
Helensburgh.
And I'm here.
Lucky you.
To be honest, I know people always say this, it's much nicer here because on set, the writer has nothing to do. You just, the actors get worried because you're around, they think you're checking up on them. There's really nothing you can do to help. You just worry about the light going and it's very stressful and boring at the same time. So this is much nicer.
I know you say, it's quite hard on set, but I did look at your Instagram the other day and you were in the Louvre on your own.
Yeah,
that was nice.
Empty.
Did you steal anything?
No, we were pretty heavily policed.
Oh, damn.
A lot of if you read the novel, you know that a lot of the scenes take place in great art galleries. They're going on a kind of a sort of European tour. So it's the Louvre and the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And you can only film there when the public is absent. So you're in these amazing, extraordinary galleries with no one around, and it's an unbelievable privilege. It was very exciting.
Please join me in thanking the wonderful David Nicholls.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Marian Keyes has written over 20 books and sold over 30 million copies worldwide. She single-handedly sustains publishing. With great warmth and lightness of touch, she tackles heartbreak, domestic violence, depression, and lots of really big subjects. She's here tonight to talk about how we're all making it up as we go along and to give us a world preview of her new novel. Please welcome the frankly fabulous Marian Keyes. I was really tempted to just pick you up and carry you over and put you down there. Lovely to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here.
And you love Glasgow, don't you?
I love Glasgow. I genuinely do. To be honest, I love the weather.
Love the weather.
I'm a pluviophile. That's a word that means someone who loves the rain. Oh. And much as I love Ireland, Glasgow kind of goes one bit better, I think, in terms of the rainfall. If that's all right. Yeah, no, honest to God, I love the people. I find them hilarious, very like Irish people, except controversially, maybe even funnier.
We'll take that. And now, the book covers it all from breaking up with your hairdresser
yes.
To entering a new decade, your 50s. Which bit are you going to read for us?
I'm going to read sort of about the love of my life, really. And I'm going to wear my goofy reading glasses, which I wear on the train. And I put a black wine gum over my tongue, over my front tooth, to deter people from sitting beside me or opposite me. I make myself look really attractive, and then I smile. All right. Once a month, I go to my local chemist to pick up my anti-mad tablets, and each visit gives me so much pleasure that, frankly, I wish I had to go every day. I hand over my prescription to my lovely pharmacist. We'll call him Edward, although his name is Ronan. And while he assembles my Madness Begone kit, I have the option of sitting peacefully on the chemist chair. I'm such a connoisseur of chemist shops that I schedule visits on foreign holidays in the same way that other people go to the market looking for knockoff handbags. And I have strong opinions about what makes a place perfect. Every well-appointed emporium should have one chair. 2 would also be acceptable in case you get a crock off, where 2 equally infirm people both looking for a sit-down. But 3 chairs are too many. 3 would encourage chat, and above all I value the peace and quiet of chemists, where the only sound, like the soothing babble of a distant stream, is the whisper of a worried man disclosing details of a strange rash to Edward. So I eschew the chair and I browse the shelves with great pleasure and discover all kinds of things I hadn't realised I needed. It's like being in a glittering Aladdin's cave. The feet section is a particular delight. Blister plasters always make the cut because a blister can happen at any time. And are you familiar with the tubey things for bunions? Now, sadly, I don't have bunions myself, but perhaps I might have a visitor to my home who would say, listen, any chance you'd have one of them tubey things for a bunion? I can cut short. The bandages section also holds particular allure for me. Whenever I gaze upon those rolls of stretchy salmon-coloured stuff that could be used to strap up a sprained ankle, I vow for the millionth time that this will be the year I do a first aid course, so I can be an emergency first responder should anyone take a tumble with me in the vicinity. Thank you. Thanks a million. Thank you. And actually, can I add in a beautiful addendum to that little story? I am the proud possessor of a bunion, and I'm wearing one of the little tubey things. I know, dreams do come true.
I'm struck all the way through this book, which is kind of a memoir, isn't it? It's sort of a patchwork memoir.
Yeah.
Where you'll talk about picking up your mad pills, and you'll talk about the myths, the mad in the heads.
Yeah.
What does the mad in the heads feel like for you?
Oh, well, I mean, I had a bad and lengthy episode of being mad in the head some years ago, and I feel, I mean, I really feel fine now most of the time, but if I don't get enough sleep, or if I'm really stressed, if I have an adrenaline hangover, or, you know, if I've had a shock or something like that, I start to feel like I'm dreaming. I start to feel like I'm not real, and the person I'm talking to isn't real, and none of it is real. And it is an actual...
Even while you're awake?
Oh my God, completely. Like, and it's called derealization. It's when a person in distress or shock is finding the reality of any situation too hard. It's a way of kind of keeping ourselves safe or something, you know, that we kind of leave our bodies or leave our selves for a while. You know, I mean, it's called depression, but like for me, you know, somebody says depression, I had depression, or, you know, and you kind of, you talk about like lying in bed and not being able to get up and looking out at like a rain-soaked window, and it's all incredibly passive. You know, depression kind of seems almost pleasant in a way, that you don't have to do much and people have to be nice to you. And but it doesn't feel like that to me. It feels frightening. You know, it feels like I'm scared. You know, I don't like feeling this way. I wish that we could treat mental health the way we treat physical health. You know, and that you could come into work and somebody would say to you, "How are you?" And you could say, "Do you know what? Like, I'm not great." You know, and because like if you have the flu, right, you know, you can come in and you can say, you know, my head is killing me and I can't stop sneezing and my bones are aching and I really want to go home and I really don't want to be here for a moment longer, but I know you're all dependent on me. Actually, no, I've changed my mind. I'm too sick. I'm going home. You know, and that's grand, you know. But if you come into work and you go, and somebody goes, "How's it go?" You know, "Good morning, how are you?" And you go, "Do you know what? I have suddenly been struck by a fear of dying. I mean, it comes on me now and again, probably since my own dad died. I suddenly realised that everybody is mortal. And, you know, it's making me feel like crying. I see death and decay everywhere I look. And, you know, I can't feel anything other than sorrow. And do you know what? Having this conversation is really unpleasant. And the more I'm saying this, the more I think, do you know what? I'm just going to go home. I'm going to lie on the couch and I'm going to watch Queer Eye for, like, you know, 8 hours straight, and I'm going to eat everything in the freezer apart from the peas, and I'll see how I'm doing tomorrow. And you know what? If I'm not feeling good tomorrow, I'm not coming in tomorrow either. And people will go, "Gran, go home, mind yourself." You know, wouldn't that be lovely?
It would be lovely.
You know, like instead of coming in feeling, "Jesus, I have to talk to these people," you know, like, it's awful. So yeah, I would love, you know, and if people were allowed to take sick leave for days like that, yeah.
The world would be a better place.
MITH days, mad in the head days.
One of the brilliant things about that memoir and about how you are on Twitter is that you're so honest about everything, and you're honest about all of that, and you're funny about all of that. And I think people feel like they have to always be serious about those very serious things. You can't be funny about it. It's to be funny about it, it's to diminish it.
Yeah, but I suppose, I mean, I've always used humour as a coping mechanism, you know, and I still have to go up to the nut house every quarter to have my brain weighed. That's what I say. But it's like, it's not. It's just like I sit in front of a young man who's about 12, and he goes, "How are you?" And I say, "Fine." He goes, "Grand. Right, here's a massive bill. Come back in 3 months." And he writes me the prescription, like for the anti-mads, which I'm very grateful for. Like, the anti-mads are a real steadier, you know? Like, I know people are mortified about taking antidepressants. I'm not. I'm so grateful for them. You know, like, if I had something else wrong with me, you know, physical, I mean, I would take the...
You've got the bunion thing
I've got the bunion, yeah. I have the tubey thing on me. I take painkillers, you know. Yeah, like, I'm grateful for any medical advances, you know, including the mad stuff.
Yeah. One of the other things that you're doing that's therapeutic, not just for you, but I have to say for us watching you do it, is your painting.
Oh my God, Damien. It's so funny. For years I had looked at abstract oil paintings and thought, any old idiot could do that, you know? All you do is you get a big old canvas and a load of oil paints and you squirt them round the canvas, and you might, like, you know, cycle a bike back and forth a little bit, or, you know, go skating across it like in your shoes. And that's precisely what I've done. I got a massive easel. I got canvases that are my height, like they're 5 foot by 3 feet. I bought all the squirty oil paints. It is mortifying. I don't drink anymore, but in the days when I drank, I used to have to go to many different off licenses because I was appearing so often at them that yeah, no, it's true. Like, oh Christ, here she is again. Should we serve her or not? You know, like wouldn't it be an act of common decency to refuse her? You know, but I feel like that now with the paint shops. I have 3 in my locality, and I'm having to kind of, you know, time my visits.
Putting dark glasses on to
Yeah,
go
and
into
a
your
hat.
craft supply
Yeah,
shop.
exactly.
Have you got any burnt umber?
Yeah, exactly. Burnt sienna. Yeah, and I am loving it. And uncharacteristically, I have decided that I am brilliant at this. I am absolutely brilliant. And you know, in my dreams, I can make money from the cycling the bike back and forth along the canvases. No, but seriously, I'm kind of keen. That's a big lie. I'm not at all keen to return to the books, but I have a strong work ethic, and I know that I have to.
Let's talk about process, because you said something brilliant in this book, which really resonated with me, which was that as a writer of commercial fiction, you feel often not entitled to talk about your creative process as compared to a literary novelist who's sort of excavating it from their soul somewhere. And you just don't get asked often, if at all, about your writing process.
No, and I love talking about it. I was at a book thing once, and a woman who works in retail, book retail, came up to me and says, so how many of your yolks do you churn out a year? You know,
she said that.
She literally said that. Now, in fairness to the woman, she apologised afterwards.
After you punched her?
Yeah, well, I was a little bit. And actually, no, but like weeks later, I had the most fabulous response. You know, in my dream response, I said, I churn out 12 of them a year, but actually they only take me a week to write each of them. And for the other 3 weeks of the month, I go to a spa. But I didn't think of it at the time, and I really wish I had. So I always start with a woman, you know, a woman who, I'm just wondering who she is and how she lives her life. And I want her world to be believable, and I want her emotional landscape to be believable. And you're right that because it's commercial fiction, that people assume that it's no bother to write it. And I mean, that's not the truth for me, because I take a long time to get to who the character really is. And, you know, I suppose I like to feel that when my characters are finally completed, that they are believable and recognisable, and that people will see themselves in them. But I mean, the divide between commercial and literary, like, it's really frustrating. You know, I mean, I've often said, you know, I'm described as a chick lit writer. But
how do you feel about that term?
Well, I mean, it's one that's meant to diminish what I would call as post-feminist writing. And, you know, I've said it so often, and I don't even know if I should be saying this on this show, but men who write similar books where they, you know, look at men and how they're living their lives in the contemporary world, it's not called dick lit. You know, it's just called literature. And, you know, we're just...
The book is calling me. It is calling me. The new novel is called Grown Ups.
Yes.
Tell us about it, and then please maybe have a wee world premiere, a casual world premiere.
Thank you. All right, Grown Ups is, thanks a million. It's about a very glamorous, good-looking family who have a few quid. It's 3 brothers and their various wives, ex-wives, adult stepchildren, children, and they get on very well, allegedly, do you know? And they spend, they see each other for sort of glamorous get-togethers. And on the surface, they all get on extremely well. Underneath the surface, some of them really don't get on at all, and others get on far too well. So, but that's all grand. At the very start of the novel, it's a birthday dinner, and they're all there. And somebody says something that she shouldn't have said. And it starts a sort of unravelling of their very enmeshed lives. Now, the reader doesn't know exactly what is being revealed, but you just know something really, well, many terrible things have gone down that night. And then we start the novel 6 months earlier, and it shows, like, I do it like 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, like all the way up to the present day, and you find out like how all the allegiances changed, and how, you know, and I'm actually making them sound like really horrible people. They're not. They're ordinary, a very ordinary family where they've kind of gone a little bit too far.
Okay.
And the piece I'm going to read is actually, it doesn't really tell you that much about them, because I suppose I can't tell you that much about them. It's about the 3 brothers. They've gone on a cycle, they're on a holiday in Italy, and the younger brother, Liam, who's the really good-looking one. He is a keen cyclist, and Johnny is the oldest one, and Johnny is not a keen cyclist, but he's been made go. Ed is the middle brother. He couldn't care less. He'll do what he's told. So this is about the three of them. Johnny and Ed exchanged a look. For God's sake, don't laugh. But it was difficult not to. Liam had pushed the pace all morning. Ed had kept up, but Johnny loitered far behind, huffing and puffing and hating every second. Then, about 10 kilometres from home, Liam gave a sudden howl and skidded to a halt, claiming to have done something to his back. They helped him, wincing and swearing, to the shade of a tree. Johnny flung himself down beside his brother. I might never be able to get up again, Liam said. At least you can cure yourself, Ed said, distributing bottles of water with your massage stuff. No, I can't. How would I reach? How could this just have happened out of nowhere? I wasn't doing anything to my back. It's just the way of things, Ed said. You try to disaster-proof your life, but the thing that causes all the trouble is something you'd never even thought about. How do you mean? Johnny sounded anxious. I worried about money, about being away for field work, about Vinny being a bit wild. Any of them could blow up our lives, I thought. But this thing happening to Cara, never saw that one coming. Thought we were talking about my back, Liam said. How did this conversation become about you, Ed? That's it. It's just, you know, thank you.
I did not want you to stop.
Thank you. Thanks.
Please join me in thanking Marian, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Marian. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Amy. You lovely, lovely man. Thank you so much.
I was going to say that Chris McQueen is one of Scotland's most exciting new writers, but that makes me feel old. He is doing for the Scots language now what Burns did then, and he is just as bawdy. He's been described as Charlie Brooker on Buckfast. He's here tonight to perform a story in which tragedy and comedy exist in perfect balance. It's called The Jaffa, and he's called Chris McQueen.
That's a wee story called The Jaffa. I'm 21 and I'm in the van with Paul, the new guy. We've got an hour's drive ahead of us until we reach the site we're working on. Small talk fills the space between us, practically suffocating us. It's like football. Who do you support? You got the game this weekend? What'd you do before this? Where are you fae? And on it goes, learning all the wee things about each other that make up the roughest sketch of our personalities. Half an hour later, and we've come up for air. The small talk has disappeared. I've exhausted all my usual casual conversational offerings. After a few miles of silence and clutching at straws, I offer up the next topic. Have you got any wains? No, he says with a smile. I'm a Jaffa. A what? A Jaffa? Like a Jaffa orange? Sorry, big man, I'm lost here. I can't have wains. You see, Jaffa oranges have a genetic mutation which renders them seedless and unable to reproduce. Paul's a Jaffa. Like me, now I'm 24. I've been with my word for 6 years. As soon as I finish with her, she's pregnant within a month with another guy's wedding. Then I spend another 3 years with somebody else. So that's 9 years, 2 birds, and not a single missed period, not a single scare. So of course, I'm going to start to think I'm a Jaffa as well. So my granda, he's one of 13. My ma, she's one of 3. Me, I'm one of 2. And now, is this it? Is this the end of the line? My wee brother's got a different daft from me, so am I the last of the McQueers? Will my granny and granda be sad? Is my ma going to be angry? How do I feel? I don't know. I always imagine myself as having wains, settling down with maybe 2 or 3. Filling their heads with nonsense and hitting them with terrible patter. It'd be magic. When I first thought that I might be infertile around 4 years ago, it was a weird feeling. That future you've imagined now has to be reconstructed with different parameters. Eventually, though, I made my peace with the fact. Accepted that I'd never have wains of mine, and was always telling myself that it wasn't really that big of a deal. It's not something I'd ever vocalised to anybody, though, because how do you bring that up at the pub on a Friday night with your pals? How do you tell your ma that you're worried you won't be able to get your grandwains? So I just kept it to myself, kept it at the back of my mind, and tried not to worry about it. Now I'm 27. I'm in the back of a taxi in London with the love of my life, although she doesn't know that yet. We're 2 bottles of wine deep, and the chat is getting serious. We're no filling the silence or passing the time like I was with Paul in the van. We want to know everything about each other, want to keep reaffirming how good a match we are for each other. Do you want wines, by the way? I ask, feeling quite bold. Oh, I think I'm barren, she replies. Oh, no way, I'm a Jaffa, I say instantly. What's that? She asks. So I tell her all about the humble Jaffa orange. And we start talking about our future. Surrogates, adoption, maybe we'll just get a load of dogs, who knows. The delivery method the wines come by doesn't matter. We've got a lot of love to give, and they'll be on the receiving end of it. So we're at peace with it. Our new future sprawls out in front of us. The wines we have might not be biologically ours, but who cares? It's a shame there won't be a wee lassie with a Mo's perfect smile or Irish eyes. But imagine a wee boy running about with my giant nose and massive eyebrows. Maybe I'm doing the world a favour. Now I'm nearly 28, and me and my bird have just lost a pregnancy. Nobody prepares you for that, gaining and losing a child within a matter of days. Nobody prepares you for when you go to Tesco for bread and milk, and you start tearing up at the sight of the baby clothes section, these wee tiny versions of clothes that are similar to your own. Nobody tells you you're going to be scared. Scared to tell your pals, scared to tell your own ma. Feeling sad about the whole thing, but then relieved, and then guilty for feeling relieved, and then sad again. And on it goes, watching my girlfriend in pain and not being able to take it away. No knowing what to think, no knowing what to say. Maybe our future looks different now. Maybe it's better than we imagined. I just wish there was an easier way for us to find out. I guess I'm not a Jaffa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris McQueen. That's it for tonight. I want you to join me in thanking the BC Amigos Book Club. All of you here in Helensburgh for being here. John Niven, David Nicholls, Marian and Chris McQueen. Next time, I'll be talking Secrets and Lies with Denise Minor, Patrick Gale, Inua Elms, and Graham Norton. Until then, happy reading.